This online presentation will be brief, and it is a pretty broad overview of the IEP process. We are always available to anyone who has questions or needs clarification about IEP process or really any other education-related topic. Please don't hesitate to contact us at 314-989-8460, or you can email us at face@ssdmo.org. So here at FACE, we're a new department. You may have been familiar with PETA, or Parent and Diversity Awareness, Parent Education Diversity Awareness, or our family engagement departments. We've merged and we are now FACE. And our mission at FACE is to partner with students, families, and staff to support students' specialized academic, social, and emotional needs to promote self-determination, equitable opportunities, and authentic inclusion. If you would like any more information about FACE, you can go to our website at ssd.org/FACE. All right. The goal of our presentation tonight is pretty simple. We are going to be providing a basic overview of the IEP, which is the Individualized Education Program. So now we're going to pull up a poll real quick to start our night off about how you have ever felt in an IEP. So Adrian's going to pull up a poll for you, and you can pick as many as you want. I know I've felt some of these ways during an IEP meeting. So if you wouldn't mind taking that quick poll. And some of these things are: have you felt emotional in an IEP meeting? Have you felt confused in an IEP meeting? Have you ever left an IEP meeting confused? Wish you'd said more? That's always me. I was just talking to Adrian about that. Or wish you'd said less? Looks like we have a couple people for saying they wish that they had said more. That's definitely my team, my thing. I've been doing this my entire adult life. I've been in special education, and I still leave my son's IEP meetings thinking, why didn't I just speak up? So you're not alone in that. Our results are pretty great. They say we've all had some of these emotions in the past. So we're going to go ahead and end that poll. So this is a quote by Dr. Rita Pearson, who was an inspirational educator. She gave a very famous TED Talk called "Every Kid Needs a Champion." And I like this quote because when we work with our IEP team, this is our goal: to be an advocate so that our kids can become the best that they can possibly be. It's the whole reason we have individualized education programs. We want what's best for kids, and we want them to really make connections and be the best that they can be. So it is important that we start at the beginning and to develop an understanding of the laws behind the Individualized Education Program. An IEP is part of federal law known as IDEA. It's the Individuals with Disability Education Act. IDEA is a federal law that governs special education. You can find more information about IDEA on this website. We are going to drop a document into the chat that has a listing of all the websites that I'm citing, plus some other things that I think you'll find helpful. So you can just pull that up, and it is for your reference. Thank you, Adrian, for putting that in there. All right, it's important to know about the laws that govern special education. Special school district and local school districts must comply with the requirements of the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA. IDEA provides you and your child with these 6 major protections that you can see on the slide. Additionally, your child's education must align with ESSA, or Every Student Succeeds Act. Many of you may have heard about the No Child Left Behind Act. That's the one that I was the most familiar with when I was younger. It has been replaced, I think, in 2015 by ESSA. So those are the basic protections that you have within IDEA. Under IDEA, each state must adhere to the federal guidelines, and also they have a state plan that governs school districts within each state. Each local school district, known as the local education agency, or you may have seen that as LEA, must comply with the state plan. There's another link in that document where you can view our Missouri state plan. One of the questions that we get all the time is, how does my kid get an IEP? And that is a complicated answer somewhat, but it all starts with a referral, and a parent can make this referral, a staff member can make this referral. It can be in writing or it can be verbal. Either one works. I prefer them in writing because then you have your own paper trail of like when the timeline started. And you'll be requesting this evaluation. The school will then look through its current records to see if that student qualifies for an evaluation, if there's a reason to do it. Once the student records are reviewed, and if evidence shows that there's a possible need for special education, a comprehensive evaluation will be completed. So based on this information, then it will be determined whether or not a student requires special education. There is a whole flow chart that I have added into that document that can show you the timelines from like the time that you ask for an evaluation to when the evaluation has to occur, the time of the evaluation to when the IEP meeting can be, and when that can start. So if you are interested in those timelines, that is available on that document. So once you've gone through that process and you have qualified for an IEP, you will qualify under one of these 13 disability categories. A child must meet the criteria for one or more of these educational disability categories that are listed in the Missouri State Plan and show a need for special education and related services. The educational categories are part of the Missouri State Plan, and they are listed on this slide here. I would also like to bring up that there is a difference between a medical diagnosis and qualifying for an educational disability category. Because we are not diagnosing, you were just labeled into a category. They're two different things. So for example, this one comes up all the time, that someone may have a medical diagnosis of autism, but they do not qualify for a disability category in autism. So those two things are different. Sometimes they coincide, but they do not always. So it's always good to know the difference there. An IEP, once you have it, has two general purposes. You're going to be setting reasonable learning goals for a child, and you're going to state the services that the school district will provide the child. So that's what's laid out within your IEP. So you may be wondering, who gets to determine what's in the IEP? And the answer is, it's a team. And the team meets, they're going to review the assessments and the evaluation information that was given about the child, and they're going to create an educational program to meet the child's needs based on his or her specific disability. You can find this information again on the IDEA website. And we're going to discuss the members of an IEP team on the next slide. So you can see these members of the IEP team, and a parent or guardian is always invited to these meetings. They're always welcome to any meeting that has to do with their child. Some IEP teams may be very small and some may be very large. It just depends on on the needs of the specific child. However, certain roles are required to be filled in order for it to be a true IEP team meeting. These roles include someone that's knowledgeable about the general education curriculum, someone who's knowledgeable about special education options, someone who represents the local education agency or LEA, and someone who can interpret the evaluation results. So those are the four 4 roles that have to be filled for each IEP meeting. And again, parents and guardians are equal members of the IEP team. They have just as much voice as anyone else in the team, and you can invite other people to the meeting. For example, I have a friend that I've wanted to invite to my son's meetings. Even though I know a lot about special education, having someone there for me to process it and write notes and poke me about what I've been talking about with her is really helpful. And because I'm a parent and I'm an equal member of the IEP team, it's my choice to bring someone to that meeting. So now that we know what helps create the IEP, let's talk about what exactly is in it, the different parts of the IEP. Each child's IEP must contain specific information as listed within IDEA, which is that federal law that governs it. In the next few slides, we're going to go over the different parts of the IEP and review those. So each IEP must contain specific information for the IDEA law. We're going to begin by reviewing the first part of the IEP called the present level of academic and functional performance. You may have heard it called a FLEP, which is kind of a funny word. And it describes how the child is currently doing in school and how the child's disability affects his or her involvement and progress in the general education curriculum. This will be unique and specific to each child. So this kind of gives a snapshot of how things are going, where the kid is at that current time of the IEP that you've written this specific IEP. This will also include information about how the child learns best, what strengths the student has, and what areas are difficult for the student, what concerns the staff have, the parents have, or any other member of the IEP team. So like I said, it's just a general overshoot about how the kid's doing and what we're concerned about, and what they're doing well can be in there too, their strengths. The team then will develop the goals for the child based on the needs that have been identified. So in the present level, we're identifying the needs, the strengths, the weaknesses. Now we're going to make goals for those things. These goals are based on what the IEP team believes he or she can reasonably accomplish in 1 year. So that is definitely something that you need to remember. So these IEP goals should be very specific and be obtainable within 1 year. Be data driven. So we're not just making up like we want her to get better at reading. Well, what does that mean? It needs to be very specific and it needs to be driven by data. And it needs to be related to the student's specific special education needs. And it needs to be contain a time period for completion. So by September 22nd of 2022, Betty will increase her reading level by from this to this. It really needs to be specific. The goal drives services that are also including related services such as speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nursing, and social work. It also describes such supplemental aids, such as communication device, supports for school personnel required to accomplish those goals. So it's going to lay all of that information out. You may see the amount of time spent in each of these related services as minutes per week or minutes per month. Either way is okay, but it will lay all of those things out. Okay. An IEP will also list how much of the school day the child would be educated in the general education environment and how much of the day the child is going to be in a special education setting. This is commonly known as the student's placement. This is generally given on what they call the placement continuum, and you want to make sure that it's least restrictive environment. So you want to make sure you're not over servicing the child and they're, in special education over 80% of the time when really they could be doing those things in the general education setting. The next one is program accommodations and modifications. An IEP will include these things to help your child learn. An accommodation changes how a student learns the material. A modification changes what the student is taught or expected to learn. So I try to tell myself, like, an accommodation helps kind of, and a modification actually changes it. It's an easy way for me to think about it. An example of an accommodation is using an audiobook for reading. Even though the child is listening to the book instead of reading it, he or she will still be expected to learn the same material, just in a different way. An example of a modification is providing a shortened or a different work to the student. Students who receive modifications are not expected to learn the same material as their classmates. So it's not just changing the way you're learning it, it's actually changing what you learn. And those things will all be laid out in that section. So when does your IEP begin? The IEP will also specify this. It will specify when your service and modifications will begin, how often they will be provided, where they will be provided, and how long they will last. So will they be provided within the general education classroom? Is there a teacher pushing in for that? Will they be in a separate classroom, or they go to, say, the resource room or another separate classroom? So all of that is to be specified within the IEP. All right, and we're going to be measuring the goals with the IEP. That's kind of the whole point, right? We're making these goals, we're measuring them, seeing how they're going. The goals and progress of each student will be measured, and the IEP will include how the progress will be measured and when the progress will be reported. All right. So now let's move on by answering questions about when an IEP is developed and or updated. So an initial IEP meeting, so after you've had that initial evaluation process and you've gone through that, it must be held within 30 days after it's been determined through that comprehensive evaluation that a child has met criteria for one or more of the educational disability categories listed under the Missouri State Plan that we went over before. And then the needs for special education or related services. Once a child has an IEP, it must be reviewed at least one time every 365 days to determine whether the annual goals have been achieved. But it also can be reviewed at any time when any member of the IEP team requests it. So if things aren't going well, you don't have to wait till that 1 year mark to say, hey guys, let's get together, let's review this IEP, maybe we need to make some changes. You can do that as often as necessary. That doesn't mean that every meeting you have with your kid's teacher needs to be an IEP meeting. But if it does seem like the programming isn't working, or they need more or less programming, you can definitely reconvene that IEP at any time. So here's the part about communication. We've gone through what the IEP is, how to get one, who's a member, what it entails. But communicating before the IEP meeting is really important to make sure that it's as tailored to your child as humanly possible. Ways to prepare for the IEP meeting are some forms that you can fill out. We have them on our website. DESE also has one. These will be included on that document. Looking through those and answering them ahead of time, and you can even give them to your student's teacher ahead of time so he or she can start thinking about it. And then there's also a really great tool that Special School District has been using recently called Charting the LifeCourse. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of Charting the LifeCourse, but I personally love it. And thankfully, SSD is bought in to the idea of Charting LifeCourse. This is a great set of tools that have been developed by the University of Kansas City that help set goals and problem solve for really anyone, but we're using it specifically for our students with disabilities. So the very first tool is called the one-page profile. So this is a great thing to give people a snippet of what your student needs and wants. It literally this simple, but it makes a huge difference in how people get to know your students. So the first one is what people like and admire about me. Those are some of the things that can go into the present level. What do people see as my strengths? What am I good at? What's important to me? And it's kind of funny, if you ask students this, you would be surprised at their answers. So sometimes just getting there and asking is very important. You know, what is important to me? What do I want to accomplish? And then this other one is great. It's how to best support me. What are the ways that help me be successful? Help your student be successful. So this is called the trajectory. This is another tool that they offer, and it is, again, super simple. You don't have to have this specific tool, even though I did provide those in the document. It is a vision for what you want compared to a vision for what you don't want. So in the top left corner, you can put the things you're doing or need to do to get to what you want. And in the bottom, the things you are doing right now or need to avoid to make sure you're not getting where you don't want to be. For example, we use this with students who say, I want to go to college. I mean, that's my goal. I want to go to college. I want to be an astronaut. We can say that is the vision for what you want. Your vision is that you want to be an astronaut. Maybe your vision for what you don't want is you don't want to be stuck on your parents' couch when you're 30. You don't want to, work at a minimum wage job if that's your goal, what you don't want. Okay, great. Well, what are you doing right now to get to those goals? Are you taking high-level math courses? Are you, turning all your homework in? Are you able to manage your own time? Those are great. What do we not want? We need to get away from having maybe para support if we're going away to college, or we need to get away from, being in a self-contained math class, things like that. So it's just a really good way to put it on paper and map it out for your student ahead of time. And then you can present this with the IEP to help drive those goals. So I really like this. The whole set of tools can be found on the website, Missouri Family to Family, or Charting the LifeCourse, and that will be on that document as well. There is more information that you guys can go to. Parent Center Hub is a great resource online, and also understood.org has some really great information on IEP and IEP process. So there's just a lot out there that we can do. And anytime anybody needs any help, would love for you to call us if you have questions about the IEP process or how things are going. Myself and my counterparts at FACE would love to talk to you about it or help you. FACE stands for Family and Community Engagement. We are a department of Special School District. So we are available to everyone in the whole special school district, and also we help even people from outside communities. We can help you connect with community resources, navigate the special education environment. All right, well, thank you everybody for spending your time with us. And again, we look forward to connecting with you in the future.